Hello and welcome to COS Indiana Live as we bring you Roundtable. The Roundtable segment is presented here every fourth Monday of the month at 7 p.m. We'll be focusing on education and discussion of the topics and challenges we all face as we use the Constitution to save the Constitution. Join us now as we bring you COS Indiana Roundtable with our MC, John Ackerman.
Welcome to COS Indiana Roundtable. I'm your host, John Ackerman. Right off the bat tonight, you're going to meet a member of the Indiana State Senate. You will meet State Senator Liz Brown, who represents Indiana's 15th Senatorial District. After that, our COS Indiana State Director, Dale Parrish, will tell you about our great educational resources so you can learn more about Convention of States. Then I'll welcome our state leadership team for I Want to Know, and they'll answer some important questions about Convention of States. Now, if you have a question, you may submit it beginning right now. If you're watching live on Facebook or YouTube, just click the comment button and enter your question. We'll do our best to answer you during I Want to Know. And then finally, I'll invite you to join Convention of States and help us use the Constitution to save the Constitution. So let's jump right into our first topic. I'm going to show you a map of Indiana's 50 senatorial districts. You see it there. And if you'd like a copy of this so you can study it more closely, send an email to our state grassroots coordinator, George Ward. You see his email address there on the left side, george.ward@cosaction.com. Be sure to type state map in the subject line. Now, if you take a close look at the northeast section of the map, you'll see a red circle around Senate District 15. That's essentially the city of Fort Wayne, which is served by Senator Liz Brown. Now, if you're watching live on Facebook or YouTube, you can post any questions for her in the comments. Here to introduce you to the senator is our state legislative liaison, Paul Phillips. Welcome to the roundtable, Paul. I'm going to step off camera and let you take it away.
Great. Well, it's my pleasure tonight to be able to talk with State Senator Liz Brown, and I'm sure she's going to be added to our screen in a moment here. There she is.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
Senator Brown, very nice to have you. Thanks for taking the time out to talk with our viewers.
Absolutely.
So I want to start with just a few questions. First of all, in the legislative session that just completed, what are some highlights or some things that you thought stood out from a legislative standpoint?
Well, I think, first of all, that once again, we passed a balanced budget, funding our schools, because, our budget funds about 50% of K-12. Mm-hmm. But we are very thoughtful and careful about doing this. I know there's been some discussion that a lot of that came from the most recent dollars flowing in from DC, but that's not true. These are our revenues that we collect, and that's how we fund it. Those programs that are being funded through CARES Act, et cetera, were not included in our budget. So that's important. Right. And then I think also one of the bigger issues that hasn't really come up to me personally is the idea of how much should our legislature be involved when we have a governor acting under emergency powers with executive orders. So we passed a law dealing with that as well.
Yeah, we really appreciate that. That was House Bill 1123, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
And it's one that Convention of States supported, and we had many of our supporters or grassroots folks calling in to the state capitol, urging the legislators to support that bill and override the governor's veto, as a matter of fact. So we count that as a big victory that you all got that passed. So thanks for your work on that. So we're not far from the next session, starting up in January of 2022. What do you see as some of the key issues coming up in this next legislative session?
Well, it's a short session, so we have a biennial budget. So, of course, last year we passed the budget. So this year will be short. We'll end around March 17th. So hopefully, to be honest, historically, this is sort of a cleanup session. So hopefully we don't have anything too major. I think I am looking into perhaps some of the social media issues in terms of censorship and apps that are tracking and things like that. But right now, I think we're all hoping, it's been such a tumultuous time politically as well, that we'll sort of ease into the year and not have any major divisive political issues.
Oh, hopefully. But
there's always that.
That would be the exception, right?
It always, yes, it always sounds good in August, and then right.
All right. Well, I noticed in this past session that you had authored in a bill calling for a constitutional amendment to limit the Supreme Court to 9 justices.
Yes.
I want to commend you for that. That's a great idea. And in fact, under our application for an Article 5 amending convention, that would be germane. We could propose that amendment. And I certainly would like to see something like that discussed at convention. So I wondered, in addition to that, are there any other measures that you think are good candidates for an amending convention to discuss for amendments to the Constitution?
No, I don't have any, but I think that is, I mean, obviously, with all the discussion before this last presidential election about packing the court, right. I think that should be top of people's minds. I mean, I actually think in the previous presidential election, people were that was very important to people, who was going to be nominating the next Supreme Court justices. And I think that's something that we should all keep in mind going forward. And the cavalier attitude, I would say, of some people on the other side of the political aisle from me, in terms of just adding as many people as you can to get the right result, in your opinion, I don't think is the way we're going to go. So I think that is extremely important. We have seen some judges in the federal circuit level and district level, in my opinion, being very going off the rails, if you will, and decided to be legislators instead of judicial officers. And I think it will be very important in terms of how we keep control of the Supreme Court.
Very good. And I neglected to mention, I should mention, you are the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee. So when it comes to the judiciary, you know of what you speak there. I was hoping I could ask you for some tips or advice for our grassroots members when they interact with their legislators. What are some tips you could give in terms of being effective at reaching a legislator and getting your point across?
Yes, that's a great question, because I think sometimes people are intimidated in terms of trying to contact and have conversations. But also, I don't think people realize we're part-time. So even when we're in session, we're usually home by Thursday night. We're in session Monday through Friday. And so we're home on Friday, or Monday through Thursday night, we're home Fridays. But also, when session ends, as it did in April of this past year, or as it will in 2022 in March, then we're done. We may go down to Indianapolis. And so we're here. We don't have offices in our district, which I think is a good thing. But so I meet people at coffee shops, but I think it's important to realize you can ask for a meeting in person, and it doesn't have to just be on the phone. I think it's always helpful if we have information ahead of time, what you want to talk about, so that we can be thoughtful when we meet with you and have the information you need. If it's a constituent question like I'm not able to get online to pay my taxes or something like that, then Our staff, we share a staffer. They can direct that. You don't need to talk to me, and I probably would take longer to do it than my staff person would. But if you want to talk about an issue, a letter is very helpful, an email. I get all of those. Form letters are not as helpful because then you are just signing your name typically to things, and you're actually probably not asking to meet with us. But yes, I mean, a phone call to our office, an email, we get those and we do respond to those.
Fantastic. So, the way you framed it, you're in at the State House Monday through Thursday, and then let's say for a 3-day weekend in the home district.
Right.
What would you prefer for somebody who wanted to meet with you? Is it better to meet at the State House, or is that a real busy time and it's maybe better to meet on the weekend, as you suggested, at a coffee shop, or even perhaps when you're out of session, like right now?
Right. Out of session. If you know ahead of time there's an issue, and I have my fall calendar is starting to get busy because people want to discuss issues that they have for next session. This is a great time in the fall. People are on vacation. They're not on vacation now, but also just because they're starting to sort of think, well, this is going to be important and I need to talk to you about that. That's great. And we're not in session. I'm happy to meet with people down at the State House. I just don't, my district is up here. And so it's about a 2-hour drive. I don't need someone to drive 2 hours to talk to me for, a certain amount of time and then drive 2 hours back. I'm happy to meet them on the weekend or a Friday. It can get kind of busy, particularly at the end of session,
Sure.
When bills are going through final passage. But if they know ahead of time, that's great if they can reach out ahead of time. But they have to be considerate too that, we can't always meet everyone in person. If it's something I can resolve over the telephone, I'm happy to do that too.
Oh, great. Now, I'm assuming we don't have any viewer questions at this point, because those would have flashed up on the screen. So I wanted to take our remaining time and just to get to know a little bit more about, how did you get started in politics? What led you to become a state senator?
Well, that's an interesting story. So probably I have to think how old my youngest daughter is. When she's starting high school, I saw a little blurb in the newspaper about this Lugar series for women, Republican women who were interested in learning more about political office. I was interested in politics. I was not engaged at all in terms of running for anything. And I did that for a year. And then I decided, and I was a stay-at-home mom with our 7 children. I thought, well, I'm going to get more involved. And after doing that, I was interested enough, started going to school board meetings and city council meetings, and it's a little daunting. So anybody who thinks I don't know this, everybody is new. There's no apprenticeship for these things. And that's how I got involved. I decided to run. Actually, most people don't realize I ran for Fort Wayne Community School Board and I didn't win. And then I ran for city council, and that kind of started it. So
I see a banner here. We do have a viewer question now. So let's take a look at that question. There it is. Okay. What do you feel is your greatest legislative accomplishment?
Well, if you're going to talk about bills in particular, I have been fortunate to carry a significant amount of pro-life legislation,
Right.
and those have been very impactful. Those of us who in Allen County, as an example, remember the horrible news about finding over 2,000 babies' remains in Illinois. I mean, we passed legislation. That wasn't a crime. We passed legislation that no one could do that in the future, and making sure women are informed. But I also think, so there are specific bills I could point to that I'm very proud of. And if I never did anything else, I am very proud that I've been able to be part of those. But I also think that as a member of the Appropriations Committee and a member of the State Budget Committee, which meets all year round, I actually am quite proud of the input that I've given in terms of funding programs and projects and agencies and calling them to be more accountable. And not that I think they're necessarily not doing a good job, but making sure that they're more transparent. And that's not a bill per se. Obviously I have input on the budget, but all of the 50 senators do. But I think that is something that I bring to the table. I am never afraid to ask a question, and I'm never afraid to admit that maybe I don't know the answer and why are we spending this? And sometimes it's a good answer, and sometimes I might disagree.
Wonderful. Oh, and we do have another question. What's a typical day in the legislature like?
It's actually fascinating. So Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday afternoons in a regular week, we are in session, which means we actually are voting on something. And then in the mornings and Wednesday afternoon are the committees where a bill will first start. And so it's really interesting to, like, I chaired judiciary this past year for the first time. And our first bills right out of the gate were to fix something we made a mistake last year. And it caused all this problem with any kind of document that had to be signed. The wording was such that it might have required two. So we did that right away. That passed within January. That's not something I was engaged in before. And so you learn a lot of things. But at the same time, a typical day is talking to people about issues that may not even come to fruition. A big one for me in judiciary is we had bills on COVID immunity. That never would have been the case. So businesses who followed procedures would be able to open and wouldn't be sued if, a customer got sick or an employee got sick, those kinds of things. That also went through by February. So that's atypical, but a typical day is meeting either constituents, just, Joe and John Smith coming off the street because they want to talk about something, or they're representatives of an industry, a lobbyist who have bad names, a bad reputation, but they are the ones who are sort of the mouthpiece. They know the details, so they can explain to us, okay, if you do this or you don't do this, this is what's going to happen to the nursing homes, the hospitals, or whatever, manufacturing. So that's what it is. It's talking to a lot of people, I guess, about a lot of issues.
I see we have time for one more question. So you have brought up, being the chair of a committee, and part of what goes on in the legislature are committee hearings, and oftentimes everyday citizens will come to testify at your committee hearings. What kind of advice or tips would you give to our grassroots if they choose to testify at one of the committee hearings? What would make up an effective testimony?
Again, some people bring testimony and hand it, but I think it is because our committee members are, on other committees and in both political parties. I think it's really important to not have a long statement, whatever you want to testify to, if you're talking about a particular bill, as much as being willing to answer questions and understanding. But if you're opposed or in favor of a bill, be very specific on not just, I don't like this is a bad idea, but if it's helpful to explain how it will impact your community. Because at the end of the day, you may be representing, you may be a witness coming to talk, and nobody on the committee represents your district. And so I wouldn't know Southern Indiana, something that we're passing, maybe my district's fine with it. So you have to really bring it home, because we don't have all that information all the time.
Very good. Well, not seeing any more viewer questions. Oh, we do have one. This is from Dale Tipton. He's one of our region captains in the northwest corner of the state. And he wants to know, how do your peers generally feel about term limits?
My fellow senators, I would say that's not a conversation either from the Democrats, the Republicans, that has normally come up. But I would say it's really interesting. I'm in the middle of my second term. Senators have 4-year terms. State reps have 2. And I think we've had almost a 50% turnover since I was elected. So it is kind of interesting. When I got there, I would say, without really doing the math, I would say probably the average senator served at least 16, 20 years or something, it seemed like. So it's kind of a natural attrition now, and the age of people replacing them is all over the board. It's not like a whole bunch of young people. I think generally, there are other states that have tried it. The only one I've heard, to be honest, where it's been a little problematic is Michigan, because the retort from actually lobbyists was they all turn over within 6 years. And so really the lobbyists and the bureaucrats are running the state. And that's a little disconcerting. I know it takes a while to learn some of the agencies, and you consider there's a problem, how to actually fix the problem. So
yeah, I believe we've currently got only 15 states that have term limits for their state legislatures. So it seems to me if it would work extremely well, we'd see more states implementing it. I thought I saw another viewer question pop up here. Yes, this is from Rick Lyon. My college sophomore grandson is interested in political leadership. Any advice for him?
Well, I hope he's in Indiana, because if he is, we have interns that are hired every spring semester, and we're always looking for interns. And I think that is like baptism by fire. I mean, they come in and they work with our LAs. And so in LA, and the legislative assistant serves 2 senators. So they're kind of busy, and there's 1 intern, and they will learn a lot. They will learn how constituent issues. They will learn about how legislation is passed and amendments are filed and all of the other things that are going along. So I would definitely recommend, they're usually college students. Sometimes they're right out of college, but that would be a great way if they're interested in the state politics. But to be honest, we don't have an office outside, as I said, but in terms of the federal level, they certainly have in-district offices. Our congressman does, our U.S. senators do, and they may not pay you all the time, but they're always looking for volunteers too. So if you kind of want to dabble, and I know some of the schools actually have programs where they will send you to DC and you can get credit. But I personally love the interns that we have, and I think that is a great way to learn a lot about state government.
So that internship position at the State House is a full-time position. Is that correct? So in a sense, the student would take a semester off?
Yes, I think they get 12 credits, if I'm not mistaken, and they get a stipend. And of course, in a short session, it ends sooner. So I don't know how that works with their credits. But yes, they're not going to school. And actually, we've had kids from my district, from St. Francis, Purdue, Fort Wayne, of course, down in Indianapolis, IU and Purdue. And it's a great learning. And you can be in our press office. You can be in the legal. We have a legal office, the fiscal piece, or you can actually work with one of the senators. And the House does the same thing.
Okay. Well, we have a comment here from our friend Graham Rembarger with Americans for Prosperity. You've got his endorsement here for Senate internship.
Well, he was one of the younger interns. He did a great job. And he was not my intern, but I knew him. And so, yes, it is a great way to learn about other issues too in politics and other avenues to get into to work with these issues. You may see an advocacy group while you're working for a senator that you're interested in, which I think maybe Graham had that experience, and then you will get a job. So that's a good thing. Wonderful.
Well, I think we're out of viewer questions and comments here. We've really enjoyed our time with you here, Senator Brown. We appreciate you so much taking the time with us, and more than that, we appreciate your service in the Indiana Senate.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. I think more than ever, we and your group has done a great job. We need to make sure all the next generations understand how our Constitution really works. As you said, I love that tagline, use our Constitution to save our Constitution. And I think that's what we need to do. We need to make sure people understand the power should rest with us.
Yes.
Citizens.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
All right, we're going to turn things back over to John.
Thanks, Paul Phillips and Senator Liz Brown. That was a very informative conversation. Now remember, as we move forward in this roundtable, if you have any questions at all about Convention of States, you can ask them now by clicking the comment button if you're watching live on Facebook or YouTube. Right now, I want to introduce Dale Parrish, our COS Indiana State Director. Dale, I'm going to go off to the backstage and let you take over for this education part.
All right, John. Thank you very much. Good job. Good job. Well, folks, good evening and welcome to our roundtable meeting. This segment we call it the education segment. And the primary objective in this segment is to make you aware of the various educational resources that we have available to us here in Indiana. And then each month, we're going to select one of those resources and kind of feature it, kind of dwell on it a little while and give you a little more information about that particular resource. So we'll try and do that every month. As I said, pick one of the different resources that we have. And we have quite a few resources, I might say. So that's without further ado, then I'm going to bring up my PowerPoint and get started on just informing you and making you aware of the different resources that we have here available to us. And not only just in Indiana, but this would pertain to just about really anyone in Convention of States. So the very first resource that we have, this is a national resource, and it's our national website, conventionofstates.com. You're going to hear us make reference to this website frequently. This is a website that is full of information. It's where you sign up to become a supporter. It's where you sign up to volunteer. It's where, if you're looking for information about Convention of States, articles, testimonials, it's all here on this website. And also, each state uses the back end of this website to administer the organization in the particular state. So this is very, very key resource for us here in Indiana, as well as nationally. Now, the next resource, we've featured this resource in our first roundtable on June 28th, I believe it was. This is COS University, Convention of States University. Now, for those of us that have been in Convention of States for some years, we didn't have this when we first started in Convention of States. All the training and so forth, educational tasks were pretty much left up to us to do ourselves. But over the years, this has developed into just a great resource. COS University. These are all online video type courses where you can take it at the leisure of your home, and this is information courses that just give you general information, even if you're just a volunteer, or if you have selected a specific position, leadership position, then we can tailor the courses to fit your particular position. So great resource that we have available, COS University. Also, here in Indiana, we have our YouTube channel, COS Indiana. Very much a resource, educational resource for us. We have a number of narrated PowerPoint presentations. We have recordings of various meetings and broadcasts that we do, and I'll get into that very shortly. Links to different podcasts. I'll be mentioning that very shortly. So it's very much a collection of information that you can access, and it's all on YouTube at our YouTube channel, COS Indiana. Now, here is another resource that we don't talk about very much, and we're going to talk about it more. This is a wiki page, and as a matter of fact, next month in September, this will be our featured resource. And the reason I like to point this out is the individual that authored this and maintains this wiki page is our own Jerry Rowe, is one of our systems information analysts here in Indiana. And he's just done a terrific job. If you have any question about historical, Convention of States, Constitution, anything related to our effort, this is a place to go to find answers. So this is our wiki page, conventionofstates.com. So you want to make sure you tune in next month to hear more about, we're going to have Jerry on to talk about this particular resource specifically. Now, another resource that has been developed in the past year, and that is a group of constitutional coaches. These are Patriot Academy certified Constitution coaches. And we have more than what I have pictured here. But these are individuals that have been certified through the Patriot Academy program. And if you have, these are specifically designed for small groups. So if you have a small group, a group of people that you associate with on a regular basis, and you want to learn more about our founding documents and the founding of our country and the Constitution, get in contact with us and we'll line you up with one of these coaches, and they will work with you to present this program to you. It's a great resource, and I'm anxious to have this featured on one of our upcoming monthly roundtable meetings. Got to mention a couple podcasts that we have available. Paul Phillips from Segment 1 has a podcast called The Free to Be Free. And Paul does a great job on this podcast. Then I do the COS Indiana Live podcast, which is basically the audio portion of our various COS Indiana Live presentations, our broadcasts, I should say. And I'll be mentioning that very, very shortly here. So 2 podcasts that are available to us as additional resources. Now, the resource that we're going to feature tonight is our COS Indiana Live live stream broadcast that we do every Monday night. And I'm the host of this broadcast. So this is an every Monday night broadcast. And we have devoted now the 4th Monday, which is tonight for the month of August, we've devoted the entire broadcast to a roundtable meeting. And that's what we're doing tonight. So tonight's roundtable meeting is a COS Indiana Live broadcast, and being broadcast through our state Facebook page, Convention of States Indiana, and also being broadcast on our YouTube channel, COS Indiana. So this is the resource that we're going to feature tonight, and I'm always happy to talk about COS Indiana Live, since I'm the one that kind of hosts this every Monday evening. But like I said, it's every Monday evening at 7 p.m. And I know this is a very, very busy slide. There's a lot of information on here, and I won't go through all of it. But this is something that we do, like I said, every Monday evening. We strive to focus on Indiana. And the main thing that I do is introduce you to leadership individuals in our organization here in Indiana, especially new leadership individuals. And so we've been focusing here for many, many weeks on the various new district captains that we've had come into our organization this year. So introducing you to leadership individuals, giving you some general information about Convention of States, what we're trying to accomplish here in Indiana, and how we're going about doing that. We'll talk about upcoming events, kind of give you a little peek at some events that have occurred so far in the month. And then of course, at the end, we're going to invite you to join Convention of States, and we're going to show you how to go about doing that. But I wanted to point out 2 features that we do on COS Indiana Live, because I think they're very, very educational, and very, very interesting. And one of those resources, you can see up here in the upper left-hand corner, those are the two resources that I want to touch on. And the first one is what we call John's Journal. Now, we have certain individuals that we call COS Indiana Live contributors. And these are individuals that have generally have strong opinions on different things, have things that they want to say. And our Master of Ceremonies this evening, John Ackerman, is one of those individuals. And we call his contributions John's Journal. So what I want to do is I want to play one for you. They're very brief, but I want to play one for you and give you an idea of what John's Journal is all about. So let me see if I can get this up here.
John Ackerman again for the Convention of States, Indiana. I saw the cutest little cartoon meme the other day. The headline says, "It's the law of common sense." Right under it is a drawing of 4 people sitting in a wagon with one person pulling that wagon. Now, that might work if there's one horse pulling the wagon, but one person pulling 4. And then underneath the drawing it says, if too many people enjoy the free ride and not enough people help pull, the wagon isn't going anywhere. Man, is that ever true. And when our society fosters dependence on government for subsistence checks and for housing assistance and so on, now don't get me wrong, there are some people who need it, okay? But when too many people fall into that trap, we have a problem, a society that isn't going anywhere, a wagon that's stuck, maybe stuck in the mud. Think about that. Yeah. And so every able-bodied person needs to get out of that wagon and help to pull on that rope so that we can carry one another's burdens and help those who really need the help, and so fulfill the law of Christ.
John's Journal by John Ackerman. I hope you enjoyed that, John. I always enjoy bringing one of John's contributions onto our broadcast. So now the other, let me get back to the PowerPoint so I can show you what I kind of lost track here where I'm at. Okay. The other individual that I wanted to introduce to you tonight is the young lady we refer to as our super volunteer. And Debbie comes on once a month. Debbie Stewart comes on once a month to give us some lesson in constitutional literacy or civics. So I want to bring Debbie on and introduce her to you and let her talk to you a bit here. Hi, Debbie.
Hi, Dale.
Let me get you up here on a full screen here so everybody can see you. There you are. There you are. Debbie, why don't you tell everybody, if you would, please, your role on COS Indiana Live and what we have you do once a month. Okay.
Great. You bet. So I teach or present 2 different areas. The first is constitutional literacy. The second is civics. And with constitutional literacy, it's all about learning what our Constitution means, what's in it. We dive down into the 7 articles and also the amendments. And as the government infringes more and more on our freedoms, it's very difficult for we, the people, to push back on those on their infringement if we don't really understand what our freedoms are. And this course by Michael Ferris really drives home the point of what are our constitutional freedoms and how the Constitution restrains our government. Some past episodes that we've already done: powers of Congress, judicial review, and judicial oversight, or I should say overreach, and abortion rights. And some of the upcoming topics are our national debt. There's a big one for you. Parental rights and reclaiming our country. So that's kind of the first thing that I do. The second part is civics. And I really feel by teaching people and just letting people know all about our country and all the different things, the neat things about our wonderful nation, that we develop a love and a passion in our people where they want to get more involved. And so we cover topics like our treasured documents, what the U.S. military. We talk about what are all the buildings in Washington, D.C., and what are they there for, and what do they do in them. We talk about the 3 branches of government, and patriotic symbols, and we just try to cover a ton of things about our nation, even what our holidays are there for. So that's what I do: constitutional literacy and then civics.
All right. Well, thank you, Debbie. I didn't know if I mentioned this or not, but Debbie is a homeschool teacher. Still does some, I guess, don't you? Yeah. So she's good at this, folks. And well, we've certainly enjoyed having her as part of our broadcast every Monday evening on COS Indiana Live. So thank you for coming on, Debbie. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dale.
Debbie Stewart, folks. Hope you enjoyed that. Well, that is a wrap on the education segment. Like I said, on our next month segment, we'll quickly review the different resources again that we have available. But next month, we plan on featuring the state wiki page, and hopefully have its author, Jerry Rowe, on as my guest. So that'll be it. Let me bring John back up here. And John, I'm going to turn things over to you now.
Well, okay. Thanks, Dale. That was a very informative session on our educational resources. Now, remember, as we head toward the top of the hour, if you have any questions at all about Convention of States, you can ask them right now by clicking the comment button if you're watching live on Facebook or YouTube. To answer these questions, I'm going to call our state leadership team onto the screen. Hello, George. Welcome back. And Ken, hi there.
Hello, George. Hello.
Yeah. And here comes Gary. Welcome back, Gary.
Thank you.
And Paul, you were here a few minutes ago, and I see you didn't go too far away. And Dale, you're back. Okay, guys. Do we have any viewer questions, first of all? Let's ask that. If we did, they would be popping up here.
Okay. Nothing at this point, John.
Okay. Viewer, you have about 10, 15 minutes. Get a question posted if you want an answer to it. We will try. So I've got some common questions that are out there floating around in the ether. And I want to throw some of these out there. And the one that's on the screen right now says, can we trust the Constitution? And I'd like to ask Gary Harbaugh up in the Fort Wayne area to give us an answer to that. Can we even trust this Constitution, Gary?
John, we must trust the Constitution because it is the rudder that is supposed to guide the ship of state. Without the Constitution, we have utter chaos. We invite chaos. The central challenge, I think, that we face today is finding among we the people the courage to demand that the institutions of government actually follow the Constitution. And whether they're elected or appointed officials, we need to let them know that we expect them to follow the Constitution. And I might anticipate a related question, can we trust Article 5? Well, as a matter of fact, yes. Article 5 has been used already for adopting the 27 amendments that we have, even though we haven't used the second method provided for in Article 5. There is no reason not to assume that Article 5 will be as trustworthy in the future and the way we intend to use it as it has been for the 27 amendments that have already been adopted.
Yeah, very good answer. Thank you, Gary, for that. And I've got some
Hey, John,
more.
I think we do have a viewer question here.
Well, let's see it.
Okay, let me get to it here.
Susan Lyon writes, how would Indiana legislatures choose the state of Indiana's representatives for a convention of states? And I think Paul Phillips would be a good one to answer that as our legislative liaison.
All
How
right.
would it happen, Paul?
Well, the state of Indiana passed a law in 2013, which is prior to Convention of States passing our resolution in Indiana. And it lays out the selection process. And it requires that the people that we send cannot be employees of the federal government. So our senators and congressmen can't go. And you have to be 18 and a resident of Indiana, a legal voter. Can't be a felon, and I think there might be a couple of other things. But by and large, the selection and management of the commissioners we send will be governed by the laws of a principal and an agent, or agency laws. So the state government is the principal. They're the one wanting to get things done. And then the commissioners we send would be the agents. So it's almost like if you were sending somebody to an auction to bid on your behalf, and you would tell them, don't pay more than so much for the item I want to buy, and you'd give them all of the parameters. So the same would be done for who the legislature sends. And the Indiana law provides that if the commissioners that are sent don't follow the legislature's instruction, they could be guilty of a felony and be fined and get some jail time. And the legislature, of course, has the ability to recall those people if they don't like how they're acting, if they're not acting on behalf of their instructions from the state legislature.
Okay, so did you say this, or did I forget that you said it, that the legislature itself will choose these
Yes.
commissioners, and they are called commissioners? Yeah.
Yes.
So the legislature will choose them.
Right. And in all likelihood, the majority of them will be legislators or former legislators because they have the skills, know the procedure, all of that legislative mumbo jumbo that's going to be going on at the convention.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Paul. Well, let's move on to another question then.
We've got another viewer question here. John.
Great. Let's put it up on that screen.
This is a good one.
From Dale Tipton, for those COS veterans, how has COS moved forward with regard to momentum in 2021 compared to prior years? Ken Kashuba, do you feel qualified to answer that one?
I'll take a stab at that, John. Sure, why not?
Thank you.
I think, I think if I just go based on, my own experience, I came on late 2016, early 2017. And as you know, we were already a past state. So, I kind of found it rather, what do we do? The main point was, let's, get more people to sign the petition and grow our grassroots states, state enrollment banks. And, that's always part of what we do. But, as far as momentum and what's happened since then, I look at, 2020, obviously the election, where Donald Trump basically surprised the world. Since that time, momentum has just kind of steamrolled. And I think really what's happened just in the last 6 to 8 months has produced really interest like never before. And I think it's because people are waking up to the fact that, hey, we're losing our freedoms. Mm-hmm. or we're on the cliff. I mean, we're really close to losing the things that we value, and I think sometimes a majority of Americans have overlooked in the years gone by. So I think it's one of those things that really people just started waking up to the fact that, hey, this doesn't seem right. And when you start having people question the Constitution, and people start saying, well, that's an old document. I mean, it's not relevant today. It absolutely is relevant today. And I think a lot of people are waking up to it. And I think the momentum is built because people realize, I think at this point, that dangerously so, that if they really start doing, they have to do something more than just go in and pull a lever and go home and go back to life as it always is. I think people are really recognizing that life as we have come to know it is really dangerously slipping away from us, and it's time to stand up and actually do something. And I think that has driven people into our ranks and to want to find out more about what the Convention of States actually is all about, Article 5. And again, I think you've heard it a number of times tonight, use the Constitution to save the Constitution. And I think it's one of the things that drives people, and I think that we've seen that momentum, and we've seen our volunteers, our signers, all that activity has increased. And I think it's really because of the world that we've suddenly found ourselves in.
Yeah, I think you're right. I've seen some press releases from COS National about the momentum it's building all across the country. And it's an exciting time to be alive and to see these things happen. So thanks, Ken, for that answer. You know what? George Ward, our grassroots coordinator, hasn't had a chance to talk yet tonight. Do we have a question for George? There's a good one. Hey, George, why call a convention of states?
Oh, well, let me kind of put a bug in your ear about that. Balanced budget. Let's see what's another one. Term limits. Let's see. How about the power and jurisdiction of the federal government?
Yeah.
Term limits, term limits, balanced budget. These are things that we've, the people, 80% of the people in the country thought would be a good idea, and we want to see it done. And, other than a couple show votes kind of thing, nothing gets done by Congress. So these are things that the founders, Congress has their 2/3 if they need to propose an amendment, but the founders realizing that, like with balanced budget and term limits, that Congress is never going to do anything to rein in any of their own power, any centralized government. People just don't work that way. But so they gave the same authority to the people via their state's legislators to call for a convention, a meeting. That's all it is. It's just a meeting of the states to debate and discuss and propose amendments, so the people can get things done that they want to have done, not just whatever Congress decides to pick and choose from.
Yeah, I think it was one of our founding fathers, George Mason, who said that Congress will never limit its own power or give up any of its power. And the only way we can claw that power back to we the people is by calling a convention of states. So that's a great answer, George. Thanks a lot.
Glad to do it.
Okay, Mr. Producer, do we have any more questions in the hopper there?
Yes, we do. And let me get to one here. Here's one. Yeah.
Yeah. Are any political leaders or media celebrities supporting Convention of States? Well, Ken Kashuba is our communications director, and he's a good guy to answer this question because he has his finger on this pulse. Ken?
Thanks, John. Yeah, I find it interesting you're asking this question, and obviously I think people are always interested in political leaders or, obviously celebrities that back our Convention of States. But before I even mention some of those, let me talk about really what are the most important supporters of COS. And that happens to be the supporters themselves, we the people. Do you know that we have over 5 million supporters?
Wow.
We have over 2 million petition signers. And we have over 187,000 volunteers. Those people are really, those are the people you mentioned before that are pulling. But to go ahead and answer the question, there are some very interesting, educated people and people that understand the importance and what Convention of States is all about in order to support us. And on the political side, you've got governors. You've got Governor Ron DeSantis. You've got Governor Bobby Jindal. Governor Greg Abbott is another governor that supports us. We have senators like Rand Paul and people like Dr. Ben Carson. On the celebrity side, you've got well-known people like Mark Levin, Sean Hannity. You have people like Michael Ferris that are part of this or supporting us. We have Lieutenant Colonel Bill Cowan and even Honorable Jeb Bush. So there are a lot of people that recognize what we're doing and support our cause. And I think, those are just that's a thumbnail of the political and media celebrities that basically support the Convention of States.
Well, that's pretty good. Thanks, Ken. I see we're running close to the top of the hour here, so we better move on. And I want to thank you five for coming on and answering these great questions. So now as we move toward the invitation for you to volunteer, I want to show you a real cool video.
After the last election, liberty-minded Americans faced a difficult question. What do we do now? Our cities have been ravaged by riots. Calls from the left to defund the police continue unabated, while violent crime and murder rates skyrocket across the country. Joe Biden controls the White House. Sort of. Really, we all know that Joe Biden's no longer in control of his faculties, and others behind the scenes actually control the agenda. Socialists control Congress. Leftists control the deep state. Marxists control our country's schools and universities, and the tech oligarchs are their willing censors and watchful spies. So who has a plan to stop them? Certainly, we're not seeing courage from Capitol Hill to stand up to the Democrats and their woke mob. The good news is that we do have a plan to stop them. This is the only plan that bypasses Biden and Congress to save the republic. And this plan brings the fight to where we, the people, have a political advantage. While many Americans were disappointed in the outcome of this election at the presidential level, liberty-minded state legislators quietly swept to enormous victories. Now's the time to use this to our advantage and draw the fight for our liberties out of the swamp and into the battlefield where we, the people, have the advantage, in the states. This plan to call a convention of states can propose constitutional amendments that prohibit Congress from adding justices to the Supreme Court or states to the Union. This plan can secure our Second Amendment rights. It can eliminate the woke Department of Education, and it can stop the federal government from taking over the state election process. You need to know that this plan's underway already, and it's working. Join 5 million supporters and citizen activists, along with my friends Mark Levin, Rand Paul, Ben Shapiro, Glenn Beck, Mike Huckabee, Sean Hannity, and many, many more.
The Convention of States, ultimately, fundamentally, the way to secure our republic.
Washington is so broken it may not be fixable, that the only way you'll truly get reform is by having a convention where people decide, we need to have term limits, or we have to have a balanced budget amendment.
I have endorsed it, and I believe very strongly that it's the only way we're ever going to get a balanced budget amendment. It's the only way we're ever going to be able to bring some real reform to our system.
I mean, I've been a longtime supporter of the Convention of States and to reestablish the sort of guiding principles of the Constitution.
You have a chance of really saving the republic. I am all in. ConventionofStates.com.
And now I'm joining Convention of States to make this happen. So join me in this constitutional revolution at ConventionofStates.com. They have a petition. Go sign it today.
Support the only plan that bypasses Biden and Congress to save the republic. Sign the petition at ConventionofStates.com.
That right now, if you're not one of the 5 million supporters, go to our website right now, ConventionofStates.com. Once you're there, you can sign our petition, and we're going to show it to you. Here it is. Okay, you would fill out those fields right there with your name and contact information, and then you would be one of our petition signers, and we welcome you. We need you to do that. Now, if you really want to make a difference, find the Take Action at the top of the screen in that menu bar there, and click Take Action, and then that will take you to this page that says Become a Leader. And you can click where it says Become a Leader, and you'll see there all of the volunteer positions that we have open, and we need you to join this movement. Now is the time to visit ConventionofStates.com, click Take Action, and help us make history. Well, this brings us to the end of the roundtable. So mark your calendar. You don't want to miss the next roundtable on the 4th Monday of September. That'll be September 27th at 7 p.m. I'm John Ackerman for COS Indiana Roundtable.